crazy military headphones are disrupting the billion-dollar earphone market.
Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Exactly who you want to see on this Tuesday. Seth Harp from Harp on Sports, Zac Blobner, WDAE, a former Florida Gator grad, going to be joining us here momentarily. He's going to head up the road from Tampa on this Tuesday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning. As always, coming to you live from the Crime Prevention Security System home studios, large enough to serve you and, of course, small enough to care. You want to be a part of the program? There's a couple of routes that you can take. Of course, Facebook Live. Fire off your questions, courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law firm partner of the Florida Gators. You also can hit us up via YouTube. YouTube questions, courtesy of Quality Plumbing. Residential and commercial plumbing since 1984, 40 years. Their name says it all. And of course, you got some texts. You can fire those away to Shane as well and then the entire crew, courtesy of the Titan MRI text line. That is 352-353-7465, 352-373, or 353-7465. All right. Zac Blobner enters the chat, WDAE in Tampa. You can hear him every single day as he discusses the entire Tampa sports landscape, as well as the Florida Gators and anything and everything affecting the Sunshine State. Zac, I got a couple layered things that we can talk about that we're going to dive into. One, baseball season winding down pretty much for the consumption aspect once NFL preseason kicks in. If your team's not in a pennant race, got some issues. But Wyatt Langford, one of the 5 finalists right now, according to Caesars Palace, for Rookie of the Year, former Gator, currently playing for the Texas Ranger. There's 2 Yankees on that list and 2 Red Sox, so near and dear to your heart. I got some questions for you on the Rays as well. I love that Junior Caminero is up. I'm scratching my temple why a guy like Chandler Simpson's hitting 360 at AA and's got 55 stolen bases. He is the next Ricky Henderson / Juan Pierre. Why is he still at AA? But we'll save that for a little bit later on in that Wyatt Langford conversation. Big news happening last week with regards to Gator football that has nothing to do with Gator football. That is Ben Sass exiting state. Well, we find out why he exited stage right as the Florida Gator president, and it affects football in this aspect. The pressure is now off Billy Napier, or it's been diffused. I'll say it again. The pressure has now dwindled for Billy Napier because as Billy goes, Scott Strickland goes. And the fact that school doesn't have a president, has an interim president, has a board trying to figure out what they want to do after a $15 million budget issue that has got everybody scratching their temples, that this process to replace the Florida president is going to take longer than this football season. What does it mean to you, Zac Blobner, that Billy looks around and says, I've got a boss, but my boss doesn't have a boss? How much pressure should that, because it does, how much pressure should that take off Billy Napier?
I would say right this exact second, a decent amount, like a good chunk, Seth. Now, once there's losses on the schedule, I think that conversation changes real quick. But you could argue that a hot start for the Florida football program maybe diffuses it all together, right? Like maybe that's what it changes. I know a lot of people, both inside and outside of Gainesville, looking at this schedule are like, all right, if Florida really wants to not be tanked out, for the entire season, they're going to have to do a lot of their work, a lot of their winning early on in that first half, that first slate. So I think that part of it hasn't changed, but what that leads to perhaps has changed, right? Like you talk about no boss in place. You talk about how he's tied to Scott Strickland. Well, if Billy and the Gators come out and start, 5-1 or 4-1, or even, undefeated through the first month and a half, I think then the pressure is gone. I think the second half of the season is just house money, and you've really set yourself up to really see what you can do as a football program under Billy Napier in 2025. So it's led to some like quick reaction in terms of what we're looking at with this program now. But I think really the effects will be felt, assuming the Gators are able to win a lot of games early on, and what it means for 2025. So it's given him more breathing room than he probably was expecting, or that he was probably should have had, heading into this season. But at the end of the day, as we both know, it all comes down to wins and losses. Just what those results mean may vary. But if you win a bunch or you win a decent amount, things are always going to turn out better than if you start the season 0-4.
Yeah, and I look at it, Zach, like speeding, right? If it's a 55 and you're going 59, police aren't going to pull you over. So that whole thing, if he goes 6-6, what happens? If he goes 5-7, that's the equivalency of going 59 and a 55. There's also going a 70 through Lottie, where there's 6 police officers ducked behind schools and billboards, that you're cooked if you go 61 and a 60. Actually, I think that's a 45 that turns into a 35. Then but
well, by the time you find out, it's too late either way.
You find out once. I found out once a hard way. So it's one of these things I try to tell people when it comes to this, and this should be a huge relief, a huge sigh of relief for Gators fans, because when certain people, it's one thing to play with pressure. There's another thing to play with nonstop 24/7, 365 scrutiny, right? It's one thing, and I try to tell people, it's one thing to be hounded by the paparazzi when you walk outside. Oh gosh, don't take my picture. It's another thing to be Taylor Swift. It's one thing to be a member of Congress. It's another thing to be the president, right? There's different levels of pressure. So you walk out, there's Congress people, Zach, that you and I both know, and I just use this example because of all the politics going on right now on TV. There's congressmen and congresswomen that if they walked in front of you and I, we'd be like, I got news for you. One of the candidates for president or vice president walks by, we're going to, oh my God, and they're going to have Secret Service. So it's a different feel, right? So it's a different form of pressure, even though not in the same line of work, but one's running for something, one's not. So as you look at where this football program sits, all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I don't have somebody hovering over me. It's like micromanaging as a boss. That's why when you see certain things like there is a no tolerance policy, or 8 wins or you're gone. Was that last year with Iowa, where they came out, Kirk Ferentz, son, the offensive coordinator, it's like, we got to score 336 points this year or he's gone. And all of a sudden there's like graphs, like a Make-A-Wish, but the United Way thermometer, where they're coloring it in to reach the amount of money that needs to be donated. It's like, well, this thing's up. There's no way he's going to get to that much. So I just bring this up for this aspect that if with Billy, and why it's like, well, Seth, if he has a bad year, he's going to get canned. It's like, gang, you got to think about it. You don't have a school president. You have an interim president. Whoever the new coach is, you're looking at $70-80 million. Plus, that's $100 million check that's going to have to be written. If you get rid of Billy and hire a new coach, that's $30 million out. That's $70 million in, at least for what you guys want to do. So interim presidents and board of directors looking for, new football coaches in lieu of a spending spree by the former president. They're not going to do that. There is no way. I'm just here to tell you guys today that the pressure has subsided on Billy Napier, because Florida's looking for a new president, and they are going to be fiscally watched and scrutinized. And if you think for 1 second they're going to come out and go, we're going to spend $100 million after being audited and getting nailed for blowing through 4 times the budget in 16 months that they have in any calendar year ever, then you're crazy. I'm just telling you right now, that's just the way it's going to be. Let's see what we got going on. So there's that. If you have YouTube, Facebook questions, fire away. I know this is an interactive show. When it comes to that, more than happy to answer your questions. Zach, you're a Gator. You have covered this team for over a decade now, because you're long in the tooth. I've known you for a decade now. It's hard to
hurts to hear out loud. The first part, not the knowing you part.
Still have a little bit of your youth. My hair is gray, or at least the process of it. So I bring this up because the first 2 years you and I covered them together, Jim McElwain, at least in person. Covered them when we were in Georgia, but they go back-to-back SEC championship games, competitive, but lose to Alabama, then just get skull drug in the next one, and then the wheels on the bus come off. This program where it is right now, it is a middle-of-the-pack SEC program. It is. Graham Mertz is a nice quarterback, but you could also look around and say he may be the third best quarterback in the state. Miami, pretty decent transfer coming in. DJ, for what it's worth, at Oregon State, what were they, 9-3 last year? So I mean, you can start to spin the bottle on this. Zach, when it comes to DJ Lagaway, he's going to play. The question is, how much does he play? Do you envision this as being a Tim Tebow situation where you see him on the goal line, you see him in different situations, or when Billy goes to him, does he need to go to him?
I think it's the second part. I think when he goes to him, he needs to go to him. And it's crazy because Graham Mertz earned the ability to start again this year. I think Graham Mertz, because of the way he played last season, look, he's coming back and he had such a good year. You mentioned him, where does he even rank in the state? I mean, you could even throw Byron Brown for USF in there, heck of a QB. Yeah. But that being said, it's not about those guys, and it's really not even about the schedule this year or even DJ on board. It's about what Graham did last year, at least heading into week one, at least with the camp side of things here. So it's tough, though, because it depends. This kind of ties back to the first conversation we had here, Seth, about like the pressure for Billy, right? If the pressure has been somewhat released a little bit and there's less of it, I think there's less of a jump to DJ to put him in there to let him be the guy as quickly as there would be if there was a president at UF right now, if there was pressure. You bring up McElwain. I mean, even people, you look on Gator Twitter the last couple of weeks, Dan Mullen's name is everywhere. And it's like the grass is greener conversation, right? Where people are now looking back and they're like, should we have kept him? Even McElwain and the shark pick and all the craziness that happened there. He did go to those 2 SEC titles. Even Coach Boone, Muschamp, right? Like his last season wasn't pretty, but he found a way to beat Georgia before he got canned. And like, I don't know if there's any faith that this Gator team under Billy is going to win in Jacksonville this year. So, it's crazy because unfortunately for Napier, it's not just about the program in general. It's not just about the record. It's not just about the quarterbacks, but the last 3 coaches who all got fired did things that Billy hasn't done in his few seasons in Gainesville. In terms of the quarterback situation, it's tough because I think all of us from the outside looking in say, all right, well, if it starts to go south, or if Billy knows he's kind of on his last leg in some capacity at some point, whenever that is, week 1, week 5, they probably should turn it over to the young kid. They probably should let DJ kind of go out there and see if he can save your ass. Unfortunately, I think back to how Billy handled a guy like Anthony Richardson, and it gives me no faith that Napier is going to pull the trigger and put DJ in at any point, maybe barring a major injury or towards the end of the year. So Napier is just not the type of coach, Seth, that panics or that he doesn't feel pressure, right? Which is good in a game situation, fourth quarter, 2 minutes left. Like you want a guy that's calm, but you also want a sense of urgency. And I think pressure brings that. I don't know if Napier has that or ever will. And I think it's actually hurting him.
Yeah. And it's one of these things. It's one thing to build a program, right? And look, and I use this as an example. The job that Mike Norvell at Florida State has done is right out of Central Casting. Oh, my dog's down here sniffing away. Right out of Central Casting, right? What you do is you take your time, and he got a little break with the COVID year where it was like, okay, this is going to be a learning experience. They get drilled.
Which was a rough year for him on and off the field. Yeah.
And then the next year knocks on the door of 500. Year 2, kind of like Billy, loses late in the year to Florida. Billy loses late in the year to Florida State. And then year 3, boom, it clicks for him. He gets 8, 9 wins. And then year 4, undefeated regular season. Here you go. Now, I'm not saying that's the same arc, but he built that in the way that, Zach, you build like a Thanksgiving dinner where turkey's got to be in the oven for multiple hours. And you don't realize this when you're a kid, but you get up or whatever, you're going to Thanksgiving and grandma and mom and aunts, everybody, they've been working on that thing for 6 hours. You just walk in with your, at my age, Game Boy, and it's like, when do we eat? Well, it's taken a while to do this. It's just not overnight. It's like the Olympics. Like, I want to be an Olympian. Well, people have no lives, man. You know what I mean? So I look at it from that structure, and you're right.
You mentioned the money thing too with Napier and like paying a new president, Seth. Remember, FSU was in a similar boat. They were paying
Yeah.
two coaches that weren't there anymore. And there were a lot, if not at least half of the fan base in Tallahassee that wanted him out. They just couldn't afford to do it to have a quick trigger. So I know that I think the biggest unspoken secret in Gator Nation right now is that Florida fans are hoping the same thing that happened in Tallahassee happens in Gainesville, even if you won't say it out loud.
Yeah. And I think that, individual schedules and the structure, it's imperative. Florida cannot start. And look, they can't start any worse than 3-2. If this team's 3-2, then you're middling. You're middling. And, out of the gate, and I've tried to explain this to people, I know they're slight underdogs against Miami, right? They should, their ceiling, or they should be 4-1. In a year 3, a returning quarterback, the talent they should be 4-1. Then the thing is, realistically down the stretch, Zach, they shouldn't win any of those last 5 games.
No. If you can steal one,
you're being honest.
We'll be
if
happy.
You're Vegas, and if you lose, they chop off your hand. If you win, you know what I mean? You wouldn't make that bet. So, but of course, games aren't played on paper; they're played in electronic boxes. So, as you watch this unfold this year, look at my expectations. To me, they aren't through the roof. They aren't on the ground. I try to explain this to people every now and then, and it upsets people on this podcast. I'm a sports doctor. I just diagnose your problem. Don't be mad at me if you're obese. It's your fault. Okay. I mean, if you come in and I say, well, your team's struggling, it's got a rash, he's got syphilis. Don't be mad at me. I'm not the one that did it. You did it. So I look at it this way, Zach. 2 years ago, I said 6-6. I was right. Last year, I said 5-7. I was right. And there's nobody that's got more at stake in this than me. I run the radio station where they play, right? I've got ratings bonuses, money that kinds into performance.
When they win, you win.
Yeah, if Florida football struggles or Florida sports struggles, it hurts fans' feelings. If they struggle, it hurts our finances. So I want them to go undefeated in everything. I want them to win the national championship and everything.
Then everybody is calling you a homer, so you can't win either way in this business.
That's for business. But as I look at the structure of it, and where I'm going with this is, I said 6-6 2 years ago. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not gonna lie to you. I said 5-7 last year. I think they're a 500 football team. I think if they can go 3-2, 4-1, they can finish 6-6 because they can pick off LSU or pick off Ole Miss at home late. Pick off Florida State and Tallahassee, one of those. There's certain games, Georgia, Texas, that aren't winnable. But over the course and the stretch run of this thing, it's a different feel. The minute Ben Sass, now I'm not saying it's the same thing as Drew Brees picking the Saints over the Dolphins, but the minute the issue happened with Ben Sass and you had the president leave and this big investigation that's going on from the governor's office now, where misallocation of funds and financing, all of a sudden firing football coaches and paying $20 million for them to go away and an extra $70 million for a new one to come in takes the pressure off here a little bit. At least it removes some of the pressure, not all of it, but some of the pressure. He is Zac Blobner, WDAE, former Gator grad. I am Seth Harp on this edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Of course, brought to you in part by Silverback Concrete. Silverback Concrete, building firm foundations for generations to come. You stand on it. They stand by it. Also, Tropical Smoothie. Live a healthier lifestyle with bold, flavorful smoothies and amazing food. Tropical Smoothie. When you eat better, you feel better. Okay, let's see here. Some things rolling in. Some questions. Napier's going to be fine. Gators will win 7 games this year. Lagway will inspire and excitement. Brian, if he's not playing. Improved O-line will be okay going into next year. He has a few more years. Get on board with it and let's support the team. Go ahead. I mean, I'm not going to tell you. Look, if you are upset, I've always said this, and I think I taught you this when we started off broadcasting together. I'm never going to tell you how to feel. I'm going to tell you how I feel. I'm never going to tell you what you should think or what you should believe. I'm going to tell you what I think and what I believe. And as I look at this is, I don't say it's a transition, but what Billy is doing is Billy is the person that, for lack of a better term, because he's not, is 40 pounds overweight and they're eating healthy. They're getting up, they're going to the gym and they're losing a pound a week. They're doing it the right way. Fans want you to get liposuction and Ozempic and go from 40 pounds overweight to 6-pack abs and training for a marathon in a month. It doesn't work that way. Not healthy, not realistically. It doesn't work that way. So I had that. So structure-wise, there we are. And again, as this thing goes forward, we'll find out. We'll find out as the season goes on. But Miami coming up. Ready for this? 12 days away. So
It's crazy.
11 days now. As our
Crazy.
continues. Okay, Zach, I know we talked about Gator football. I wanted to thread the needle here a little bit on Wyatt Langford. I know that, you're in a baseball market. I know football's prevalent, but you get to do baseball in the summer pretty much every single day.
Yeah.
And, it's an issue now where the Rays kind of find themselves right around 500, 5 games out of the wild card. Junior Caminero is going to be in this discussion next year, Rookie of the Year in Major League Baseball. There's something that I still think you and Jay and the rest of the gang, T-Crass and the rest of the gang, I want to know how a guy like Chandler Simpson's hitting 360 at Double-A with 50 plus. He's on pace to steal 100 bases over the course of a year. How that guy can at least be at Triple-A or up. I mean, he's the next Juan Pierre or Ricky Henderson without the home runs. He just did. I know he doesn't. Well, he doesn't hit for power, and I know baseball's in a different era right now where you got to hit 20 home runs, or it's a wasteful season. But I mean, you got a guy hitting 360 that's stealing 75 bases with a month to go in the year. But I digress. I'll let you have that. Wyatt Langford. They call him up too soon.
It's tough, man. Because I've used Wyatt as an example so often this year. Ironically, with the Rays farm system and why you don't have to wait on guys as long. Not necessarily that it works or it doesn't. You still see so many different approaches. Jackson Holiday, right, gets called up, sent back down, called back up. Caminero played last year at the end of the season, and he came straight from Double-A. He didn't even play in Durham at Triple-A. So, it's crazy because there's the aspect of it where we're watching the sport and we're like, okay, is this guy ready? But then there's also service time that comes into play, right? Rookie of the Year stuff, like Caminero's up, but next year he's going to be able to win Rookie of the Year, even though it'll be his 3rd season with Major League games under his belt. It's just so weird. It's so wonky. There's too many layers to baseball. And I know, in game, those of us that enjoy the sport say that's the beauty of it. It's chess, not checkers, right? But that being said, it also applies even more so to it's like 3D chess when you bring in the farm system and all the other numbers. It's just a lot, man. It's too much. In terms of Wyatt, I mean, I think time will tell. I think you could argue that they did have him come up too soon. You got guys like Jackson Merrill, who's been playing with the Padres, who's looked really good. He might even win Rookie of the Year over a guy like Paul Skeens, who we talk about a lot more. The Pirates look like they're going to let him keep going the rest of the way too and not shut him down. Another guy that got called up pretty damn fast and they threw right into the mix. So, I think it's tough because I think we live in a day and age now where you have Wyatt Langford's players like him that you're like, we don't have to wait on. We can let them play right away. You also have guys that are probably marinating too long that should get called up sooner. And there's no real blueprint to it anymore. There's no real system to it. And again, even after you call them up, if you keep them versus sending them back down, I think the hardest part is it's a hindsight argument. If Wyatt comes out next year and is an all-star type of player, how much will we accredit the season that he's having right now and those growing pains and the lessons? So I think it's just per club, per need. I'm actually in the camp now, and maybe I've just kind of leaned into the microwave society a little too hard. You bring up some of the players of the Rays, and I think maybe being so close to their bubble and how long they take to get guys going and how hard it is for them to commit to a player staying up once they call them, that I'm like, let these guys play. Let the kids play. I think right. The gap is so small, Seth, now. And we talk about that in all sports, but from college to pros. Well, in baseball, all AAA, AA, single A, the complex league, right? There's 8 leagues even below that. I'm at a point now where I'm like, if a kid can play and he's raking, let's get him those at-bats in Major League. Let's get him pitching against Major League hitters. And look, if he gets a taste and it doesn't go well, you could send him back down. And I realize, again, there's a balancing to that. I've talked to enough of the GMs around the league, especially here, Eric Neander in Tampa Bay. So, I get the balancing act of it, Seth. But for me, it's I think that the gap is so small now. I want to see these kids play. And I'm surprised that even with Wyatt Langford, I'm surprised we're not seeing more cases like that. I think we will in the next 5-10 years, a lot more.
Yeah, I was looking at it, updated Rookie of the Year odds. Wyatt's 6th. And the reason I bring this up is, we are in a little bit of bubble. He had a big home run against the Red Sox the other day after he had 2 gigantic errors the inning before that made it 7-4, but he made up for it because he hits a 3-run bomb and they win in extra innings. but I try to line this up. Like you got a guy like Colton Cowser that plays for the Oaks, right?
Yeah.
Dude's got 18 home runs and 56 RBI, and he's hitting 250. Like, oh, well, dude, that guy's going to hit 20 home runs and driving 70 runs as a rookie on a team that may end up with the best record in the American League, right? And then you've got Rafaela from the Red Sox, who's got 13 home runs and 60 RBI, hitting 262. The reason I bring that up is Rookie of the Year is a numbers game sometimes. And Wyatt, 7 home runs, 49 RBI, hitting 240. So you look at, he's got the lowest batting average, the lowest amount of home runs, and the lowest RBI total of anybody really in this race right now. He does have some big shots. Plus the Rangers are 10 games below 500. They've kind of fallen off the map here a little bit. So it's one of these things that I look at and you're like, okay, it took him a while to get cooking here. I get it. And I understand why they brought him up at the time. You have a team that just won the World Series. You have a hole in the outfield. You have Max Scherzer, who's coming back, that at least you think's coming back in a healthy aspect. You've got all this talent coming back. Everybody was so high on the Rangers. But the injury bug enters the chat. You just can't capture the same magic that you had last year. They almost feel like the Nick Foles Eagle team, where it's like, all right, we win. All right. It's like, oh,
let's do it again.
That's not long term. That's not built for long term without an ace up there. And
right.
Yeah. So it's one of these things I was watching the other night. I'm like, oh man, well, Wyatt, well, oh geez. Okay. We've got 40 games to go. Wyatt, did they make a mistake in bringing him up? I understand the aspect. And that's why the Orioles were like, we're really, really good. We can send him down and we're still fine with Jackson Holiday. The Rangers, unfortunately, didn't have that option when the injury bug started to bite them. I know we're up against it here. Kyle Crooks, voice of Gator soccer, Gators women's basketball, Gator softball, coming up to lay out some things for us coming up here when it comes to the fall season. Other things that you have on your docket. I know you're in Tampa. You've got your own show. You're down there with John Momola, who runs the station that's looking pretty svelte these days, and Jay Retcher, who, well, you guys are good. You guys are doing a good job. I'd like to have you on our station here, but that's a different discussion for behind the scenes. What's coming up? Well, what's going on in your world down there in Tampa? I know the Bucks. We're the home of the Bucks. We're the home of the Rays. We're the home of the Lightning. I say we. ESPN Gainesville's the home of all three of those things. What's on your horizon here in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked a lot of baseball. Outside of me and maybe a handful of diehard Rays fans, I don't know how many people are paying attention to it in Tampa Bay these days. We're in full football mode. We really are, from college to specifically the NFL side of things. And really looking forward to this week. Actually, Wednesday, we got the Miami Dolphins in town, joint practices. So I'll be out there Wednesday watching those two teams go head-to-head at Bucks camp. And then the game Friday night. Obviously, we're going to get some of the starters in there, expecting to see a little bit, hopefully, from maybe like Baker Mayfield. Obviously, we haven't seen him yet. We've seen a lot of Kyle Trask, who is the clear backup. So it's going to be a lot of football, a lot of those guys moving forward, and just a ton of NFL. And, shout out to our soccer teams, man. I'm coming around a little bit. We got the Rowdies at Al Lang pushing for a big playoff. And then we just started up with the Tampa Bay Sun, the first professional women's team in Tampa Bay. So really excited about them. And then obviously hockey season's right around the corner with the Lightning. No Steven Stamkos, Jake Gensel on board now, but really it's football season, and it probably will be heavily that until the end of February.
I feel a little bad because we're up against it here. You didn't get to give me your 14-point breakdown on night one of the Democratic National Convention and why I'm looking at this from you, why Kamala Harris may be the most important female since the Virgin Mary, and also 31 reasons why Donald Trump did nothing wrong. I'm a little surprised we didn't get to that today, but anyway. Next time.
I like to balance it out. I'll argue with red, then I got to argue with blue. I want to have an equal amount of arguments in politics. So if I'm too heavy arguing with blue, I got to argue with red a little bit and vice versa.
It's funny. I said two ridiculous things. People only realize the one ridiculous thing that they don't like. And I'm sure. Yeah. Zach,
my favorite thing real quick always was being back in the Jags locker room, and how we would walk around and half the locker room thought you were red and half the locker room thought you were blue. And I was like, these guys have no idea. They all gave you a hard time, but nobody knew.
Yeah, those guys were always funny because you're right. I'd walk in and they'd be like, "Hey, I got a question for you. Why can't a guy marry a horse?" I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" Yeah. So they're like, "They're gonna get me today." I'm like, "What? You see me come in and the first thing you think of is you want to marry a horse?" No,
the weirdest stuff, man. Good times.
That's good. Yeah. 10 years ago. Hard to believe. Zac Blobner, Seth Harp here on PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Of course, Zach coming to you courtesy of the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Zach, WDAE, really quick before we let you go, when can we hear you?
12 to 3, Monday through Friday, 95.3 WDAE, free iHeartRadio app. Just look it up. 95.3 WDAE and the Fantasy Fix going to be in Miami, Jacksonville, Orlando, and obviously Tampa Bay, Sundays from 10 to 11. So get your fix in on the fantasy side starting week 1 of the NFL season.
There you go. You heard it there already. Nat wants to let you know there's no politics on this show, Zach. Just let you. All right.
Fair. I'm with you, Matt. I don't want it, Matt. That's Seth. He pushed me into it.
You can't even joke about not talking about it, but okay, anyway, there you go. You can. Who cares? All right, Zach, have a good one. Enjoy your Tuesday. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Hell yeah. Go Gators. Appreciate you, man.
Kyle Crooks, voice of about 13 Gator Sports. Kyle, waiting in the wings. He joins us next. We've reached halftime here on PodUp with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, Titan MRI, Meldon Law, Peachland Dental, QC Kinetics, Campus USA Credit Union, Dave & Buster's. Gridiron sponsors, Comfort Temp, UF Bookstores, Quality Plumbing, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogra State Farm, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, F45. Our touchdown sponsors, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Aikido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteaks, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, MG&A Wealth, Nest and Wild.
If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Pro football legend Emmitt Smith understands your joint pain.
It does not surprise me that there are a ton of people out there that's in pain.
That's why Emmitt is such a proponent of QC Kinetics, offering real lasting joint pain relief with non-surgical, all-natural biologic treatments.
Whether it's a joint pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, hip pain, any kind of pain, the body eventually will break down when it's under that much stress.
That stress can cloud your judgment to the point that you'll just say yes to the scalpel or yes to another prescription of pain pills. But maybe it's time for a second opinion from QC Kinetics.
The reason why I would recommend this is because the natural biologics that QC Kinetics is providing you gives your body a chance to naturally heal itself.
Restorative, regenerative solutions are here. Get lasting relief and live your life.
Call QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550. That's 352-400-4550. QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550.
PodUp with Matthews, moving along on this 20th day of August 2024. I am Seth Harp, Kyle Crooks, joining us here in the second segment of the program. PodUp with Matthews in the morning is brought to you in part by Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and the surrounding areas. Check them out at peachlanddental.com. And, of course, every Friday, JC and the QB's weekend picks. Also, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, a service of Florida Victorious. Join today and help make Florida victorious. All right. Kyle.
How are we?
It's amazing because it seems just like yesterday, you and I were trying to figure out how we were going to thread the needle of Gator softball, knocking off Oklahoma and getting ready to play Texas for a national championship into the fabric of a Gator regional at what? It was Oregon State, right? No, Oklahoma State. How are we going to weave all of this stuff together? And all of a sudden we blink our eyes and it's summer. And almost 60 days later, here we are. Soccer starts. You had a great call the other night, beating Western Carolina, right, to start the year. I know it's about ready to get really, really busy for you. You cover, like I said, you're the play-by-play voice for more sports than anybody that I know. So as we head into this season, Coach Bohan in her third year,
yeah.
At the helm, this is the year usually things take place. They win out of the gate. I know they haven't had a winning year in, Kyle, 5 years, 6 years? It's been a while.
2019, yeah.
Yeah, since they've had a winning season. Kyle,
Yeah.
500? What are we thinking this year?
Yeah, it's last year over 500, played 12 really close games within one goal or tied. So the talent, it's one of those things that like eventually the talent starts to creep up with the culture. I think the one thing you can say about Sam Bohan and what she's done with the soccer program is the culture and the foundation, all of that's been pretty consistent since year one. I think it's just getting the talent in here. And, unfortunately, they had a couple of injuries in the offseason. They had their SEC freshman of the year get injured in the summer. They had her backup, Tatum O'Coin, get injured in the exhibition, tore ACL. So you've had two really key injuries in an area where the biggest jump they're trying to make is in their attack and how much they can score. So you take two of those players out of the equation, but they have a really good roster. It's the best roster since she's been here, and quite frankly, it's the best roster in quite some time here in Gator soccer. It's a proud program with a lot of history. It's going to take a while to get back within that top 3 or 4 in the conference where, Becky Burley had this program pretty consistently. But the one thing you could say about this soccer team this year is they're going to be in a lot of games because defensively they're very good. They have a back 4 was ultra consistent last year. Most of that returns, and they add a 3-time SEC champion into that mix, and Emily Hauser, who's a transfer from Arkansas, who, if you follow SEC soccer, Arkansas has been the dominant group over the last handful of years. They've been very much what Florida used to be. And you bring back Alexa Goldberg in goal, who had a career season, and she's doing a really selfless thing that I think can even draw a broader conversation in sports. But she's willing in non-conference because they know they have 2 keepers behind her that have not had a chance to play. Alexa Goldberg is in her 5th season. So she's agreed to sit out a half of each game in the non-conference to get the other keepers experience. Okay. So the other day, Alexa started, and then Paloma Pena played the second half. There's a third keeper, Jaden Emanuel, will get a chance to play at some point. So they're going to do a goalkeeper by committee, not necessarily because of anything Alexa Goldberg did on the field. It's just her selfless act of, hey, I want this program to succeed in the future. And I know what that takes. That means getting some others, some action inside goal. So I think it's a group that's going to pick 13th out of 16 teams this year, obviously with Texas and Oklahoma. Texas is really good in that group. Oklahoma, not so much. But I think it's a team that's going to surprise a lot of people.
He is Kyle Crooks. I am Seth Harp. This Tuesday, August 20th edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Got a question for Kyle? Feel free to fire off. You got a couple of venues in which you can do it. Facebook Live, courtesy, of course, of Meldon Law, the only official law firm accident partner of the Florida Gators, and YouTube, Quality Plumbing, right? Serving you since 1984 for over 40 years. Big enough to serve you, of course, small enough to care. So soccer-wise, structure-wise, I know got a game under the belt. It's interesting, Kyle, because, on WRUF on ESPN Gainesville, right? 98.1 FM, 850 AM, and now on HD2, by the way, at 103.7.
I didn't know that.
We actually have an HD2 signal now. So I'm just telling this to everybody in case you're leaving town. I've been promoting it like crazy. But if you have an HD radio in your car, which if it was made after 2015, you do, there's an HD opportunity on there. If you go to 103.7 HD2, you can hear us pretty much 100 miles in each direction. So there you go. So I know that signal strength was a concern. So if you're on the drive around, you can hear us and you hear Kyle's broadcast at night, which I know is a question for some people. So there you go. A lot of games out of the gate that we're carrying on the radio just because the way things open up, right? We got Thursday, we've got Sunday coming up this week for Gator soccer. And then, of course, volleyball. We really get into volleyball once September hits, coming up here structure-wise. Kyle, it's a new era. And where I'm going with this is, this conference is going to have such a dramatic shift now that Oklahoma and Texas are in it. I looked at things when Missouri and A&M came in, and it was like, oh, that's nice. I looked at Missouri and A&M as like the bread you get before dinner. It's like, oh, that's nice. And all of a sudden, here comes a 96-ounce steak.
Yeah.
That's Texas. Boom. Here comes a pound of mashed potatoes. And why don't we throw in, I don't know, here, a 16-ounce barbecue chicken breast and some ribs. That's what Oklahoma and Texas bring to the equation. I know people have said that, well, this is the SEC. Good luck. I try to tell people, be wary, man. Texas has no holes in their bank account. It goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. It's like a Jeff Bezos bank account. Oklahoma, not quite the money in the pocketbook, but as a softball team, you don't go 250 and 12 over the course of 4 years and win 4 straight national championships. Like, wait till they have to play in the SEC. Yeah, they're not going to go 50 and 4 every year. Instead, they'll go 46 and 9, and they'll be even more prepared for postseason play. These two teams entering the chat, we know what they're going to football. But what does Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC mean for the sports that you call, for soccer, for softball, for women's basketball, for the sports other than just football? What do Oklahoma and Texas mean to this conference in terms of competitive structure, all of it?
Yeah, it's very similar to what you said. It kind of means danger for a lot of. It's just more depth to a conference that already was a gauntlet. You look at softball. I think that's the biggest example of all the sports. National championship last year, Texas against Oklahoma. The Gators and Oklahoma played a really good pair of semifinal games last year. That's sort of a precursor in what's to come. I think softball is the biggest example of just how much SEC is going to be above other. It's like it's not even close. And I'm excited to get a chance to be in it. And I know Tim Walton had said last year in his World Series press conference, Texas and Oklahoma are both coming to KDC Show Presley Stadium this year. So if you've never been out to the stadium and you want to go to a game, like, you're going to have some real prime opportunities, and there's going to be some legit audiences, television wise, radio wise, in my case, that are going to tune in to these games. Patty Gasso coming to KSP, and Mike White, who's the head coach of Texas. Like, it's going to be World Series preview after World Series preview. You have the LSUs of the world that are very good, Tennessee, who's won the league, Alabama, who's a consistent winner in softball, and then you add 2 national championship quality programs. And then I was doing a little bit of the research on this for women's basketball, sort of looking ahead to the winter. Texas is a consistent winner. They're top 5 team AP poll. Vic Schaefer, who, it's funny, a lot of these coaches who left the SEC went to a Texas or Oklahoma, and now they're being dragged back into the mix. And Vic Schaefer is one of those coaches who was the head coach at Mississippi State for many years, went to back-to-back NCAA tournament title games, and they are an Elite 8, Final Four quality program. I believe Oklahoma won 23 games. I believe they won the Big 12 regular season last year. So, like, those 2 programs in women's basketball is really going to make things even more difficult in the league. For Florida program specifically, that's going to be very young. A lot of people know they're bringing in a really good freshman class, and Shaq's daughter, Miara O'Neal, is going to be a part of that. So hopefully we can see Shaq at some of the games this year. And then, this year for soccer, Texas is very, very good. That's a College Cup quality program. Oklahoma, not so much, but Ole Miss's coach actually left for Oklahoma, and now he gets dragged back into the mix in the SEC. So it's a very consistent theme. You're bringing in the Porterhouse Stakes, like you mentioned, of formerly the Big 12 and now the SEC, and it's just going to make things extremely difficult if you think that any winning records or anything like that are guaranteed. Well, it's just getting harder to navigate your way through the conference, which is a good thing. If you like competition, it's a good thing.
Everybody in this day and age, dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, right? Everybody wants bang for their buck. This conference, you get it. You get it now. I mean, this is one of these things too. And again, especially like softball, it's going to make softball so much better. The sport that makes it, and now the college football playoffs expanded to 12. You have, you couldn't keep it as a 2 or 14 playoff by adding both of those schools. You just disrupt now you're at 12, a little more leadway, right? You can go 10-2, maybe 9-3, and sneak the back door in here. It's one of these things that I look at it. Anytime you have a chance to make me want to watch you more, anytime you have a chance to make me want to consume you more, then why wouldn't you take it? And you can make more money, and there's a reason why there's 9 Fast and the Furious movies, or how many there ever now, Kyle. People keep going to them. Why do I keep making these? Because you keep buying tickets. So there's a reason there's 455 comic book movies, right? People keep going. Wolverine, Deadpool. There's a reason. But yeah, you keep making them. So structure-wise, it was one of those things because we know what it's going to be for football. I just wanted to gauge your thoughts on the other sports and how Texas and Oklahoma entering the chat. Softball, it's going to be great. Oh my gosh. And I think what's happened here, there's been talk, and at times, Kyle, right, the Pac-12 is the dominant conference. The Big 12's top heavy when it comes to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma and Texas. Now I think all that's gone, right? With Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. The SEC now in softball becomes what the SEC is in baseball. It's the preeminent conference in its sport.
Yeah, and you're adding 2 top teams, literally 2 top teams in the country to your conference that already was the best RPI, conference strength of schedule, all those things that you throw in the mix. And you're throwing not just the 2 best teams in the Big 12, but the 2 best teams in the country into the SEC. So Florida, though, this year, Seth, if you look at it, a lot of great transfer additions. The one big replacement that you have to do something about, that's Skylar Wallace at shortstop, and you bring in Kenley Cahalan, who was the shortstop at Alabama, who a lot of people are very high on. You have a freshman pitcher and another freshman pitcher that a lot of people are very high on, a transfer addition in that pitching staff. A lot of people think that Florida in the preseason poll, now take this for what it may be, it's the preseason poll. A lot of those things don't usually come to fruition, but preseason number 1, preseason number 2, like you're looking at a Florida team that is not going to be picked 7th in the SEC like they were last year. They're going to be picked probably number 1 in the country, and that's because of what Oklahoma lost. I mean, they lost all of that generational senior class that won 4 consecutive NCAA championships now, and they didn't get the prize possession in the transfer portal like everybody thought. Nigeri Kennedy, she went to Texas Tech, and now all of a sudden Texas Tech becomes this behemoth of softball out of nowhere. Jerry Glasgow left Louisiana, which was a pretty good program, went to Texas Tech, and they paid, I believe, $1.3 million in NIL money to get Nigeri Kennedy, the pitcher from Stanford, over to Texas Tech. So Oklahoma didn't essentially win the free agency the way that we thought they would, which is another interesting thing here as they enter the SEC.
So I know that, you are entering the chat as the longest tenured play-by-play voice of Gator softball and these entities. Are we getting closer to Kyle Crooks Field at Kelly Cecil Presley Stadium? Are we on the brink of that?
I asked Tim Walton because we were talking about how Francesca Ney got into the UF Hall of Fame. And if anybody knows anything about me, I'm a very dry, sarcastic humor and very self-deprecating. So I go to Tim Walton and I say, this is breakfast at Mississippi State or whatever, when am I getting into the hall?
Yeah.
And he points out and he goes, yeah, the hall of the hotel is right out there. Why don't you head out there? So it's hopefully we're getting close. We're heading towards a decade, but I'm going to say that it's probably not going to happen. I love calling the games though. I've created my own little living space up there in that softball season. It's a very nice booth. I don't know, Seth, if you've ever been to KDC Show Presley Stadium, but seen that the press box area. We got a nice booth. We got a nice area there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that because you know as well as I do that I pretty much live at that radio station starting
especially starting Saturday, August 31st. You can find Seth Harp in
You know where to find me. You know where to find me, and but don't worry, help's on the way. Down the road.
By the way, Seth, I went to the scrimmage the other day for football, and it was a long day. It was about 3.5. It was a full game that Napier football played. They went through every single situation. I got to see, Graham Mertz, DJ Lagway in 2-minute situations. They'd start them at their own 25, and I got to see a pick six from Tyreek Sapp on a tip ball from Jack Piper, and Tyreek ran it 70 yards and did a somersault into the end zone. If you want to talk about soccer being a team that a lot of people are sleeping on, but I think Florida football-wise, with what they brought in on the offensive line, what they have defensively, and what they brought in the transfer portal and some of the freshman additions that are there. The running back room, even with an injured Montrell Johnson, looks Jaden Ball looks really good. Trayon Webb, Jacoby Jackson, who's a JUCO transfer, who I think you might see a lot of. Elijah Badger, Jim Ray DK on the outside, the wide receiver additions that they brought in. Tank Hawkins, who's an electric quick freshman they brought in. So, and then Graham Mertz, I think the biggest thing is, not to go off on a tangent here, but I think the biggest thing is explosive plays for this offense. We saw Graham with the 72% completion percentage. A lot of that was check downs and things in the flat. Can they find a way to get plays of 25 yards or more? I think that's going to be the biggest area in their growth is can they hit those electric plays? And losing Pearsall obviously is a hit to some of the weapons you have on the outside, but Billy Napier, who's had a pretty good track record and the transfer portal additions here in his young tenure, I think they have a lot of guys that are going to be able to make some electric plays this year. Graham Mertz, another year in the offense. I think it's going to be an exciting team to watch. And I know, Seth, I'm sure you're fine. I can't wait for August 31st.
Hey, man, and just to get everybody really juiced up, at noon this Saturday, I signed it the other day, Florida State, Georgia Tech, right? Live.
Yeah.
Dublin at noon on the station. So that nice. You'll be able to hear that game coming, because it's like, okay, football season's here. I got a chance to carry this game. And as well as I do, once the season starts, we pretty much pivot from baseball into football, and then we start to thread that needle with everything else that we have going on. But yeah, I mean, it's one of these things, and I try to tell people, that's why I hate it when people say a win's a win. No, it's not. This team will be the best team that's played here since the team that went to the SEC championship game in 2020 and lost to Alabama. It'll be the most talented, the best team that they've had since then. And talent-wise and structure-wise, it may be just as good as a team as there was here 8 years ago when they went to the SEC championship game. But, you have more talent. But your record may not reflect that, because Vanderbilt, a Butch Jones Tennessee team, right? Kentucky, right before Stoops got there. I mean, those schools exit stage right and enter Texas, enter Ole Miss, enter. It's the schedule is brutal, and that's why we've talked about this. It's important for them. They've got to start at least 3-2. I mean, they just have to, because of what's coming up in October and November. Just the way it works, and these things work in ebb and flows. It's just the way it is, and it's funny because I try to explain this to people every now and then. When you look at a schedule, right? And you're like, oh my God, we got to play this team. We got to play that team. We got to play this team. We got to play that team. The Texases, the Ohio States don't look at schedules that way. You look at them that way. They don't look at you that way. So when your mindset is, look at all these tough teams we have to play. Nobody thought about that in 07. Nobody thought about that in 08. Nobody thought about that in 96. Oh, look at all these tough teams. Like, oh, we got to play Florida. So that once that mindset changes, then you're fine. When you're looking at all these landmines on our schedule, that's just a mindset change. And once you get back to that level, then you can go from there. I know we were talking about this earlier with Ben Sass being gone, and this, if I can circle back and highlight something today, with Ben Sass and the issues at president at the University of Florida and the overspending and the extra money, and now that the governor's launched an investigation, Billy Napier's got to look around and go, because that is such a boon for him, because the state investigating money spending, all of a sudden you can't come in. Well, you have an interim president, and President Fox is good too. I mean, I'm glad he's back. But you're not going to have a board of directors come in that's being investigated for money and investigating this president and going and go, you know what we need to do? We need to spend $100 million on a football coach right now. So it's the pressure dropped significantly on Billy. Not gone, but it does drop. The temperature in the room does drop. He is Kyle Crooks. I am Seth Harp. PodUp with Matthews in the morning, brought to you in part by Ruse Ogra State Farm Insurance, a dedicated insurance professionals to help life go in the right direction with the right insurance options. Visit ograinsurance.com. That's OGRA insurance.com. And also brought to you in part by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. I say this, I use Campus USA Credit Union to get my car. Their rate was a full 1.5, 2 points lower than anybody else. The Lambo is sweet. She's rocking. You can see it go up and down University Avenue. Use Campus USA, car, home, whatever you're going to do. I went with another bank to finance my waterbed. I got a heck of a rate. It's 7.5% over 60 months. But still, Campus USA probably would have been better.
Love it. Seth Harp in a Lambo. Probably got the RUF logo slapped on it on the side of it.
I'm not that guy that puts his name on his license plate. No, absolutely not. No way. And I always got a kick out of that. There's a guy that I worked with in Alabama that put his name on his license plate. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What do you do? He's like, I'm not afraid of anybody. It's not about being afraid of anybody. He came in once, key mark down the side. Put your name on the side of these things. So there you go. All right, Kyle Crooks, Seth Harp. You got soccer coming up Thursday, Sunday. I know you split TV, radio. Are we going to hear that voice on the radio, or are we on TV?
We're on TV on Sunday. You got UCF, Florida UCF on Sunday on SEC Network, and then continue with soccer season. I help out a little bit with Sean and the crew for football. Do a lot of interviews for that, for pregame and things like that. So stay tuned for that. Excited to get another season going. Can't believe for me, it's my 8th year here at Florida. So it's almost a decade, and enjoy it. Enjoy being part of Gator Nation and bringing the sports. And last summer was probably one of the most gratifying games when the Gators beat Oklahoma 9-3 in the semifinal that I've ever had the chance to call. So hopefully there's some more here in the future.
And there was a certain catcher on that team, right, that was part of the transfer portal that was all tournament. So NIL and the transfer portal is not ruining college sports, Kyle?
No.
Here we are. And, it's funny you say this. We'll end with this. I'm excited. I know you're excited. Of course, it's like Christmas, right? Why wouldn't you be excited? It's the start of the year. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. I love it. I'm looking forward to it. Which circles back around to the point of the NIL is ruining college football. It's ruining college sports. Why are you so excited? If something's ruined, I'm not excited for it. I've got milk in my refrigerator just because I've been working so much, Kyle, that's got a date that says August 18th on it. I know that's ruined. Okay. But anyway, there's stuff.
We'll all be there. 90,000 people probably announced to sell out in the next day or so for Miami, and we'll be ready to go. The TV ratings will be through the roof. Everybody will be sitting on Saturday morning watching College Game Day and tuned into that FSU Georgia Tech game in Dublin. Nothing of that won't change.
Here we go, baby. And again, really quick, Florida State and Georgia Tech coming up this Saturday. And of course, next weekend, Florida, you'll hear Kyle on the pregame show. Florida taking on Miami, 11:30 a.m. pregame, 3:30 kick. Following that, we're going to take on the radio station, we're going to carry A&M Notre Dame in the second. We'll join that in progress second half sometime. So all that stuff's available for you, WRUL. All right, Kyle, thanks as always, man. I appreciate you pinch hitting today. Good catching up with you as we lay the blueprint coming up here with the fall season and into the new big, powerful SEC. Can't thank you enough. Got to thank Zach Rothrock putting this show together today. Freddie Weeby, of course. Got to thank Shane and Zac Blobner from WDAE in Tampa that started things off for us this morning. So for Kyle Crooks, Zach Blobner, Zach Rothrock, I am Seth